Steve went to the farm show this week. Sources say is that correct?
Great time with the grandchildren. It's now a family tradition, although we only took two of the four grandchildren, was a cause of consternation in some cities.
Did you said you did, or what food did you opt in for?
We only got chicken tenders because one of my daughters packed a lunch to send her daughter to the farm show
Okay.
because I don't think we were trusted with keeping healthy food as an option.
Not much
Which
of it there,
no, there's not. No, there's not. And we didn't go heavy on the milkshakes. We got some chocolate milk, so we were good that way.
Chocolate milk is good usually.
Yeah,
Chocolate milk is
it was okay. It was the animals and the crafts, and they had a good time. So
Did you
making memories.
What was the highlight of the animals?
We last year we didn't go while the cows were still there. So
Okay.
today was cow judging day. So
Ooh.
all the cows were looking fluffier and nicer than any dog we've ever had, right? And they got to see the cows getting like cleaned and washed and their hair dryers, and that was pretty cool.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy there. Name of this podcast is called Stuff Summer Says with
Steve,
We won't. We will not spend most of the time talking about the farm show. It didn't go this year. Opted out of the farm
still
show.
have time.
Still have time. Did think about swinging by though for a milkshake. As superfan Russ alluded to, the donuts are actually the
Oh, we got
piece de-
donuts in the morning. We
Okay,
did
you
that.
did have
Sure,
donuts.
that's
Okay,
right. Yeah.
those are that's actually the main reason to go to the farm.
Yeah, they weren't sharing those, so they must have been good.
Trying to think what other. There's the whole like the fried veggie one, kind of back in the one corner is usually
Yep.
a go to.
Yeah, because I was like mushroom soup, and the fried mushrooms are usually
Yeah, yeah.
good. The baked potatoes are usually good because those are.
I've
you
never
know,
had one of those. I didn't know that
Yeah.
that was an option until you had brought that up.
Yeah, so it was a good trip. But
All right.
We'll see.
We have a great conversation with a Penn Stater today. Mr. Mike Conti. He is the voice of the Atlanta United. Also does a lot of stuff for. He's the brand manager for Sports Radio 92.9 The Game, which is the main Atlanta sports station, talk show or talk station. I don't know how to talk. So we have that interview, and then Steve apparently has 5 questions for me. Was it 5? Is that what we're up to?
I'm going to cut it down to 5. Yeah.
Okay. He said allegedly has some questions for me. I do not know what they are.
It's stuff Summer says, so why wouldn't we just lean it into it?
Okay, so we're gonna just go do that. So listen to our interview with Mike, and we'll be back after this. Steve, I look to you because we make some stuff Summer says history tonight. You've never had a soccer episode. I don't think we've
Okay.
ever had a soccer.
Cool.
So
Cool.
and not only that, but we get to have a soccer episode with a Penn Stater, which is always good. I guess we had Erica Dombach on, but the soccer
that's true.
media side.
Erica's not
of
listening
it.
now. Yeah, we didn't have a
that's
soccer
fine. That's
episode
fine.
with the coach. That
If
was
Jason's
good.
listening to us, so he can help
Never
us
mind. Yeah.
fast forward through that part.
Soccer media and more.
Yes. Our guest tonight. He said professional talker earlier, which I thought was a good title. But among other things, he is the voice of the Atlanta United. He is a Penn Stater. Mike Conti, how are you?
Hey guys, it's great to see you. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Good. I wanna start there actually with Atlanta because I think of all of the markets that Penn Staters traditionally end up in, you go to New York, Philly, Pittsburgh, up this way, so to speak. How did you end up in Atlanta?
I made the decision that I was done with cold weather as soon as I graduated from Penn State in 2003. Now, it was kind of a roundabout way of getting here. So, I think as Steve probably remembers, because Steve and I go way back to when we were both young and we're not young anymore. When I graduated from Penn State, working in radio, you just try to find the first respectable job that you can get. And I had an opportunity to go work in Savannah, Georgia, right out of college. And I'm really glad I did. It was a beautiful area. It was very unfulfilling from a sports talk standpoint. I programmed a sports talk radio station down there. But aside from the 1 week a year where the PGA Tour was on Hilton Head Island and another week a year when the PGA Senior Tour was in Savannah, it just was not the same as that 24/7 news cycle that I enjoyed so much when I was at Penn State and working at 1450 in State College, because there was always something college football to talk about. It just wasn't quite the same in Savannah. But in all seriousness, I was just looking for whoever would hire me. And I was in a weird spot because I had an unusual amount of experience for someone my age. Um, as Steve could tell you, I worked in commercial radio in State College all through college and, in fact, through much of high school. So I had a lot more experience than maybe a typical college graduate. And I was just looking for someone who would hire me. I applied in a lot of different places. I remember some of the places where I applied. And I was trying to get a job maybe a little bit closer to home than where I ended up. But I'm really glad I ended up in Savannah because it was a great place to start my career. I love the weather, and I have been well south of the Mason-Dixon line for the last 25 years, and it's been all good with me.
So how did you end up at Sports Radio 92.9?
How much time you got?
We have as much time as you have. Which you're a busy man, so that might not be much.
No, you're good. So I worked in Savannah for about 3 years, and then when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in 2005, the news department at WWL was kind of fractured because some of their reporting staff had either family reasons or medical reasons where they could not sustain living in New Orleans during and after Katrina. The infrastructure there had been completely destroyed. Hospitals were out of service. The city was in shambles, literally. And I saw that as a very unique opportunity to go work at one of America's really great radio stations, WWL, which still is one of America's great radio stations. And also maybe play a very, very small role in the rebuilding of New Orleans. And that was an amazing experience, a very scary experience, a very intense experience, but an amazing experience being able to work for that great radio station for 3 years, predominantly in their news department as afternoon drive news anchor. But I also did some sports there. And that was one of the things. It's funny. I always counsel younger people who are trying to find a way to get into the industry. How do you move up in the industry? You have to be willing to do just about everything. And I'd overhear a hallway conversation. Hey, we don't have anyone to host the Saints postgame show this week. Well, I'll do it. I have some sports experience, and they let me do it. I overheard a conversation one day. We've got this arena football team in town, and because they're owned by the Saints, we have the broadcast rights, but we have no one to do the games. I'll do it because I had a background in doing play-by-play, and I love calling games. So while I was hired there to work in the news department, I'd say I probably evolved into more of a 50-50 news and sports role. And then in 2008, I had an opportunity to move up here to Atlanta, still work in the news department at WGST radio as their morning drive news anchor, but WGST also was the flagship station for the Atlanta Braves, so I did some work with the Braves. And then when Sports Radio 92.9, the game signed on in 2012, I made the jump to there as their sports director initially, and then kind of climbing the ladder to where I am now running the radio station.
What was the difference? I mean, there's the raise the hand, hey, pick me, I'll do this. And there's doing it, but there's doing it well. You won a Murrow Award at WWL, not to dismiss this, not to overlook the sports stuff that we're talking about, but you're doing news stuff at a quality that's the best in the nation. So how were you prepared for that, or did you feel you were prepared for it? And what transfers sports and news is if you're a good radio guy that's prepared, it doesn't matter where you're at or what you're doing.
Steve, you're so kind to bring that up. It's actually kind of embarrassing, to be honest with you. I think what was going on in the world in New Orleans at that time gave me a real advantage in that competition to win a Murrow because, I mean, there was no letdown in the news cycle there. So I won that for best newscast. And the day that we picked was a day where there were 3 major international stories all going on in New Orleans. I just read the copy well, so that's why I won that award. It had nothing other to do with that. But no, I think the one thing I would say is, people in sports backgrounds, and Steve's known me a long time back when I was in college, and Steve has been very, very helpful to me in my career, and I'm really proud to call Steve a friend through Penn State. I Steve knows that I did a lot of play-by-play and sports talk in State College from basically the mid '90s through 2003. And I really think sports reporters have a unique skill set that translates very well to the news desk because we are used to describing things as they are unfolding in a live and quick fashion. And I guess that skill set just kind of translated well for me, along with the fact that I think sportscasters are adept at bringing copy to life in the way that we speak, in the way that we amplify and inflect. And it just kind of worked out. I think there were a lot of bits and pieces about the news business that I came to understand a lot better through my work in New Orleans. I often compare it to maybe going to grad school without all the student loan debt of getting a master's degree, but also without getting a master's. Dave Cohen, the news director there, taught me a lot, and I really appreciate it. And, taught me a lot about the intricacies of vetting sources and how to go about getting certain things confirmed. And, kind of out of nowhere, I became an investigative reporter down there. I mean, I had no aspiration to do that. I had no background in doing it, but kind of out of nowhere, I evolved into that because I had a curiosity about some things as an outsider from New Orleans. Hey, I'm in this elevator, and I'm in all these elevators in New Orleans, and I've noticed all these operating certificates have expired. What's up with that? And I started investigating that, and it actually became a pretty elaborate investigative piece. And they liked the work I did, and they asked me to do more investigative things. And um, again, I think it was just part of having that curiosity and wanting to learn more. But it's the same thing as preparing to call a game. You're curious about the athletes that you're going to be covering and their role in the game that you're about to call. There's a certain amount of prep work that goes into that. I think it translates just the same in developing a news story. So it worked out really well for me. And to be honest with you, I think during COVID, I saw a lot of this. A lot of people who work in the sports department now being thrown into news coverage roles because there are no sports to cover. Pat Brennan at the Cincinnati Enquirer, I thought, did a remarkable job. He is their soccer writer, and he covers FC Cincinnati. He did a really good job covering the unrest in the summer of 2020, again, because I think he had that ability to process information on the fly and describe it as it was happening and basically transcribe it and convey it to his readers. So hopefully we as sports people proved our value in the clutch, to use a sports term. And for me, it was during Hurricane Katrina, but I think for many of my other counterparts, it was during COVID and all the craziness that unfolded in the summer of 2020.
Was
you
the
had one
Atlanta...
sports passion. Let me get this thing into soccer. You had one sports passion project, I think, that has lapsed, which is high school track in Pennsylvania. You went back from down south to do that, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
For how many years? Like, how long did that last?
I started in 2001. I had absolutely no business being in that booth. I was 19 years old. I started in 2001. Had no idea what I was doing. My only experience, Steve, was being the PA announcer at some state high track meets. Okay. I had no business being in that booth, but the Pennsylvania Cable Network liked my work on the state swimming and diving championships, which I did earlier that year. And there I did have some experience thanks to it. Does CNET still exist in State College, or might be called something else now? But CNET used me to call some state high swimming dual meets and some District 6 duels. And that's how the Pennsylvania Cable Network got to know me. So they liked me for my work on swimming. They used me on track and field starting in 2001. And yeah, you're right, Steve. I think I went until 2018, 2019 doing that. And then I had to stop because my Atlanta United conflicts were not resolvable. So honestly, I think the last meet before COVID was probably my last meet. So I did that almost 20 years, which is, I think when you can say that you retire at something after doing it for 20 years and you have not yet turned 40, that's probably a good thing. And for me, with the PIAA stuff, particularly with the track and field, I did a lot of other things for PCN, but track and field and swimming and diving were were the big things for me. I was able to kind of bow out of that gracefully and amicably and not yet turn 40. And so I guess that was a good thing.
Cool. Thanks.
And by the way,
ahead.
sorry, dear. I got to end on a state championship, I think, if I remember correctly. I think that was my last year doing it. I want to say it was the
If
state
somebody
high.
wants to fact check us.
Yeah,
Let us know
somebody
if
could.
that's wrong.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with
now
Mike in this
this
situation.
this is awful. I can't remember if it was boys or girls, but I do know State High won the state championship, and that's my high school. I'm a State High grad, so that was a good way for me to go out to call my school winning a state championship.
Love that. Love
Cool.
that. Was the Atlanta United thing a raise your hand, or was that something you were like, I want this?
Uh, a little bit of both and a little bit of neither. So, look, there's a lot of things I do professionally to earn a paycheck. Calling games is my passion. It's what I love doing, but it's not something that is sustainable as a full-time job. But I've always aspired and continued to this day to aspire to be the play-by-play announcer for a team in a major league sport or a major college, whether it be football or basketball. I think I'm probably best at calling basketball. I've certainly called a lot of football, but Atlanta United, when that came about in 2017, our radio station had the broadcast rights to the Atlanta Falcons, owned by Arthur Blank, who owns Atlanta United. So the Falcons approached us in 2017 asking if we would carry the Atlanta United matches. And honestly, at the radio station, we had a lot of hesitation about that. What does soccer sound like on the radio? But the Falcons were able to kind of exert enough influence on us to convince us to do it. And I'm really glad we ended up doing it because Atlanta United became an overnight hit in the city of Atlanta, and it's been very, very good for us from a business standpoint. But they asked if we would do the game. So to your point, Steve, I raised my hand and say, yeah, I'll do it. I just want to call anything. I love calling games. I don't care what it is. I'll do it. And they said, too bad. We've already hired someone, but if you still want to air the games, please do. So that first season, someone else called their matches. And at some point during the season, someone with the Falcons heard me calling something else. I think it was a football game. I can't remember. And that's when they kind of came back to the radio station. I was not running the radio station at that time. The person who was, they came back to him and said, he really sounds good, and we would like to make a change and have him call Atlanta United games going forward. Now, what was really funny is when the idea was presented to me, I was told someone at the Falcons really liked your work when he heard it. So, and I thought, oh, I'm going to get a chance to call the Atlanta Falcons. That's my dream job. And then they said they want you to call Atlanta United. I kind of sighed a little bit, like, oh, all right, yeah. I mean, that's great. I would love to do it, but I certainly wasn't as excited about it as I would have been maybe to have an opportunity to call the NFL or the NBA. And I'll never forget my brother, who's now the vice president of communications for the Indianapolis Colts. When he found out about this, he made a really good point. He said, you have to think about it this way. Atlanta United right now is drawing about 45 to 50,000 people per game. How many people do you think attend a Jacksonville Jaguars game? How many people do you think attend a Columbus Blue Jackets game or anyone in the National Hockey League? And that really sunk into me that I had an even though Major League Soccer might not be thought of in the traditional Big Four leagues as the NBA and Major League Baseball and the NFL and the National Hockey League, the way that Atlanta United operated as a business, the level of support they had, the attendance they had, basically put them on par with one of those Big Four leagues, and that is the way that I've tried to attack the job over these last 8 years. But my brother really was the one who drove that point home to me. So for being my kid brother, he's pretty smart, I guess.
How much of a learning curve was there for you?
Well, that's the funny thing.
How familiar were you with soccer? Were you
a
soccer guy at all?
Yeah, that's the funny thing. So I always have loved soccer. So if that makes me a soccer guy, I guess. Um, but I don't know if Steve remembers this or not. I called a lot of soccer on the radio when I was at Penn State on WMAJ. And in fact, I used that as a pretty flimsy credential to Atlanta United back in 2017 to say, "Oh yeah, I have lots of experience calling soccer on the radio." Now I'm going to take you back a second. Year 2000 or 2001, I was calling Penn State men's soccer on WMAJ. One of my friends that I went to high school with, his name was Trevor Gorman, and his father, Barry Gorman, was the head coach of Penn State's men's soccer team at that time. And I remember calling a game. I think we were at Villanova. I called a game and got back to town, and Trevor reached out to me and said, "Hey, yeah, I heard your game the other day. In fact, my dad and I were talking about it." I thought, "Oh, great feedback. What can you tell me?" He goes, "It was very obvious you had no idea about any of the terminology or what was going on, but it was very entertaining." And I kind of took that as maybe a compliment. So I did have actually a lot of experience calling soccer on the radio from all the way back when I was working in State College. So I kind of had an idea of how I was going to do it once I had an opportunity to get in the MLS booth. But it still took probably half of that first season with Atlanta United for me to really figure out what I was doing. Like the terminology and all that, I felt pretty good with because I do follow soccer a lot. I don't feel like I was ever, that far off from a terminology standpoint. It was just getting used to the movements of the game, some of the positioning, and how best I could describe that to a listener who was trying to visualize the match in his own or her own way. And one of the toughest parts about that, guys, was I had to find that middle ground of being able to describe soccer and its movements to a novice while also not offending those who really know the sport, because people who really know the sport want to be addressed in a certain way. And I think that's kind of off-putting to those who are trying to learn the sport. So finding that balance still to this day is difficult for me, but that was really, really hard for me at first.
Who do you hear from? I mean, the Gormans aren't listening, but who do you hear from in
No.
Atlanta?
I think social media is probably my biggest source of feedback. I'll tell you, the people I don't hear from are anyone at the club. They are very, very hands off, and I assume, like the job I'm doing, and they don't really tell me to do anything differently. So I think most of my feedback comes from social media. I do get a lot of feedback, Steve, from other people around the league. I think, and I've noticed this in the NBA too, and it's my 12th year doing Atlanta Hawks games. Um, Everyone in the league listens to each other. I listen to everyone else in the league. Dave Denholm at LAFC does things that I really like, that I try to benchmark. Um, uh, Matt Harmon in New York, it does a lot of things that I try to benchmark. Glenn Crooks, also in New York, does a lot of things that I try to learn from. Tom Gallerter in Cincinnati. I think we all listen to each other. And the highest praise that I value is when my colleagues who either are calling matches on Apple or calling matches for other teams can give me any kind of feedback, positive or negative. I value that the most because almost all of them have been doing it longer than I, and certainly at a much higher level than I. So getting the feedback from them is what I value the most. You're right. I have not heard from Trevor Gorman in about 20 years. So if he's watching or listening to this, Trevor, how are you doing?
Is Atlanta? I think of Atlanta as an interesting sports town because it sits. You have the Falcons, you have the Braves, you have the Hawks, you've had the Thrashers at one point, and to your point, Atlanta United. I started paying attention more to the MLS right around 2017 because that was when DC got Wayne Rooney. But
Yeah.
Atlanta United has like really become one of the bigger sports teams in the town. But then I also think of SEC football. Like,
Yes.
what is the balance between professional and college sports, particularly for you, that's somebody that's managing a a sports talk radio station.
Here's the best way I can describe Atlanta. More than half of the people who currently live down here are not from here. Okay. So Atlanta United, I think, really took off because they were a new thing in 2017. And for someone like me, who was born in Philadelphia, I could get behind Atlanta United and not necessarily feel like I was cheating on my home city, because the Union did not exist when I was a kid. And I think that was very much the same for people who migrated from Chicago down to Atlanta. You didn't really feel like you were cheating on Chicago Fire because they didn't have much of a tradition, or New Yorkers who come down here. They didn't feel like they were cheating on, New York Red Bulls or New York City because they didn't really have a heritage or a tradition. Whereas the baseball fan who migrated from Chicago is still probably fiercely loyal to the Cubs or the White Sox. Or the baseball fan that migrated down here is fiercely loyal to the Yankees or the Mets. So I think Atlanta United came about at the exact right time, where you had a community of transplants who were looking for something to get behind in Atlanta. And it just kind of clicked because they had immediate success. To your question about the balance between collegiate sports and professional sports, Atlanta absolutely is first and foremost a college football city. Now, what's interesting is, yes, the University of Georgia probably has the highest fraction of fans that live in Atlanta. But Steve mentioned earlier, a lot of Penn Staters, when they graduate, they move to New York or Philadelphia or Pittsburgh or whatever. Anyone who graduates from an SEC institution, their first job is usually in Atlanta. So if it's really neat, if you drive around Metro Atlanta on a Saturday afternoon, even when Georgia's playing, yes, a lot of people are going to be paying attention to Georgia, but go up and down Roswell Road and you'll pass the Alabama bar and the Auburn bar and the Vanderbilt bar and the Tennessee bar and the Florida. Every Southeastern Conference institution has tens of thousands of fans in Atlanta. So college football is massive here, but University of Georgia football is only a small piece of that. When UGA does well, that dominates the news cycle here. But, when UGA played Alabama for the national championship in 2017 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, or I guess 2018, the crowd was 50-50. The city was 50% for UGA, 50% against them, because everyone was rooting against UGA. It's a really unique phenomenon, not like in Pennsylvania, where the vast majority of college football fans in Pennsylvania are probably for Penn State or Notre Dame, and then, Pitt's got a few and Temple's got a few and whatever. Here in Atlanta, maybe 40% for UGA and 10% for Georgia Tech, and the other 50% is pretty evenly divided between all the other SEC schools and even some ACC schools and some Big Ten schools.
Well, that's because it just means more down there, right?
It's hard as a Big Ten guy to be down here and listen to all that rhetoric. I feel like I'm constantly defending the honor of this conference. And thank God for the Indiana Hoosiers now to do all my work for me. Who would have thought?
As a program director, I'm curious, you talked about play-by-play, but what are your headaches as a program director? And I'm guessing you don't have to raise your hand now. You could just take the gigs.
That's right. And I'm prepared to hire myself the second that one of the, you know what? Let me go back to that for 1 second. So we have an absolutely outstanding crew that calls Atlanta Falcons games. Wes Durham and Dave Archer, and I think they've done it together for 20 plus years. And, that COVID season was so wacky in sports broadcasting in general. You couldn't get in the building without passing a COVID test. And the first game of the 2020 season, Wes actually failed a COVID test. And the Falcons asked if I would fill in for him and call that game. First time calling an NFL game. And the feedback that I got after the game was, God, we really miss Wes. And then I had to fill in for him again the next season because, again, he failed a COVID test. And I did a game up in Buffalo. And the feedback that I saw was, Mike was good. But, man, we really miss Wes. So that was a very important moment for me to kind of understand, like, hey, I might have these aspirations, I might have these goals, I might think I could do a really good job, but our listeners are comfortable with something else, and that's totally fine. Um, Steve, I love programming the radio station. I would quit tomorrow if I had an opportunity to have a full-time play-by-play job with a major league sports team. I would quit tomorrow. My boss knows that. I just really love calling games. And in the meantime, I also really love programming the radio station. My biggest headache is dealing with talent. I think all of us in our industry, especially those in a large market such as Atlanta, um, we're very, very confident in our creativity and our ability to connect with our audience. And sometimes the confidence manifests into overconfidence and sometimes an unwillingness to do the fundamental things that we need to do to carry out our job professionally. And it's my job to keep that on the rails. And dealing with the pushback from talent is something that I really don't enjoy. Along with that, what really gives me headaches is dealing with agents. I can't stand it. I don't know how Matt Campbell and before him James Franklin and college football coaches around the country are handling dealing with agents right now. If I could take that part of my job and throw it in the trash, I'd do it tomorrow. And agents are very good at what they do. They're advocating for their clients, but man, I wish I could just get that part of my life out and negotiate directly with people and interact directly with people rather than having to go through an intermediary who's just trying to jack up the price, basically.
No, that's fair. Cool.
Why does sports talk radio still have a place in sports society, if you will?
Yeah, I think it's instant feedback. And I think it's still the only medium where fans can provide instant feedback and believe that they are being heard. Your podcast is outstanding, and podcasting is absolutely the way of the future of audio media. And I would imagine in 5 to 10 years, traditional radio is going to really pivot exclusively to phones and computers and smart devices, and terrestrial radio is going to probably go the way of blockbuster video. It maybe not in 5 or 10 years, but certainly in my lifetime. But the one thing that we can do on 92.9 The Game and in any other terrestrial sports talk radio station in the country is we can provide our listeners with the ability to immediately interact with us and provide their feedback and share their passion for what they care about. You can't do that on a podcast. You can't do that in written word. You certainly can't do that with television. I do think you're seeing a real evolution on YouTube right now of people who are creating their own content, which is great. But, I think anytime that we can share joy or sorrow in a communal fashion instantly, that's what's going to keep sports talk radio alive. And I think the best sports talk radio stations in the country are the ones who listen to their customers, that's their listeners, and give them the opportunity to be directly a part of what they do on the air.
All right, Mike, we have 3 questions to wrap up here. They're very tough. They're all Penn State related. I think you'll do okay.
Oh, jeez.
Your go-to creamery ice cream flavor?
Chocolate peanut butter.
Okay. Now, you grew up in State College. You are not opting for Meyer Dairy, correct? You are picking.
Well, now I didn't know that was an option.
No, okay. We're not giving him. We are not giving him that option. We are not giving him that option. We were just curious if he.
You could have let it alone. You had to pick the scab.
That's fair.
I have to say, I lived in Boalsburg, so I had the Meyer Dairy proximity, and that Oreo cookie at Meyer Dairy, that's about as good as it gets. So I do have to kind of vouch for that.
Most of the townies end up picking for Meyer Dairy, unfortunately.
I think also too, they gave us so much creamery ice cream in the dorms and in the press box that I just the novelty kind of wore off.
That's fair. No, that's a fair point. You are the czar of Penn State sports for one day. What change are you making? What are you doing?
I am demolishing the Bryce Jordan Center.
Correct.
And moving basketball into Rec Hall.
Correct. That's the
That
correct
might be
answer.
the most popular answer too.
Also, yeah, generally the most popular answer. All right, you are back in town for one night and one night only. You can stumble into any bar, living or dead.
Ooh.
Which one is it?
Living or dead?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to give you a kind of nuanced answer here. You said a bar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to the bar at the deli.
Okay.
And I'm going to have the baked potato soup with those lavash crackers. Man, do I miss that. And then I'll go downstairs to the saloon and get a monkey boy. Is the saloon still open?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no?
Saloon's
Okay.
not there, is it?
I think
no, the saloon's something else.
No, yeah, it's something else now, I think. Yeah. I lose track. That's
That's
why
good.
we
He
say...
got a specific food and beverage pairing for him, which was great.
That's good. That's why we say living or dead, because it changes every 5 minutes.
Well, and I'm old now, so half the bars that were open when I was there are all gone now.
That's fair.
That's true.
All right, Mike, where can people find you, your stuff? Tune in and listen.
Yeah, if you're in Atlanta, tune in to 92.9 The Game. I'm either doing a Hawks game or an Atlanta United match, or sometimes elsewhere popping up on the air. And I'm on X at Mike Conti 929. Hopefully, when you come down to Atlanta, you try to listen to me, I'll have a reliable internet connection, and I won't have to do this goofy stuff with having to join you on the phone.
You're good. You're good. We appreciate your time.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you, Mike, very much.
Steve, how many times have we had a guest on this podcast and they have just been like, just raise your hand? Like just raise your hand. And I think that is always so refreshing to hear, because that is always what opens the doors for people. And like, some of that is luck, but a lot of that is hard work that comes from that, and just that work ethic. And I really enjoyed that from Mike. And I appreciated his honesty about like getting comfortable in calling a sport that he hadn't really called since college. And it's not in necessarily, even if you are a big soccer fan, it's not necessarily a sport that a lot of Americans are listening to on the radio. So it's not like we have these, like, a lot of people that get into sports radio, they have a radio announcer that they know that they want to emulate or have as an idol, right? Mike didn't really have that, and I thought that was interesting to hear. His honesty. I thought that was a really good conversation. We could have kept going for 2 hours with him.
Yeah, because I didn't pick at the connection with West Durham for the Saints. I think he's closer to it than us. I think he's probably right about the future of terrestrial radio. But the strength of those entities, at least in play-by-play and even in sports talk, is the connections that fans make with the hosts. It's a highly personal connection that you don't have in other forms of media, even TV, because you're listening, and it forces you to interact in a better way. It forces you to invest and really listen to make those connections. So I think that's a strength of terrestrial radio. I think that's why every market has a play-by-play guy that the fans know and generally love, because he's their guy or woman. So I thought that was good. And I think the raise your hand, yeah, they picked a broadcast, and that was the broadcast that won the Murrow Award. And yes, it was Katrina down there at the time that he won, but Mike's good. I mean, you don't luck into that stuff. You might be in the right place, but you still got to execute the play, do the stuff, and for him to do it on sports and news throughout his career is impressive stuff. Yeah,
I think it's interesting what you said about particularly sports talk radio. I feel like, and I don't even think I mean, obviously, like there was like the moment for conservative radio, like conservative news radio, and that like generally has like been a thing, and like NPR is kind of more so the liberal side of that. But I do feel like, of all of the media outlets, maybe besides message boards, that's the one where it's the easiest to interact with the host and easiest to kind of develop a relationship. And I think that part of it will never go away. And I think it might change the platform in which we might get that might change, but I don't think we're ever going to lose that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, stations the size of Atlanta or New York may not, although the fan in New York, the regular hosts know the voices of their callers, know them by the name they're using. You know, smaller to mid-sized markets, there's probably places where the sports talk folks, when they go do the live show, are meeting their callers and then having another connection, and it becomes even personal that way. So I don't.
I mean,
think
look
that's
at
ever
State
gonna
College, right? Like the Fox radio station, the Fox Sports radio station in State College has developed its own niche. You look at Landon Tengwell and his show that he's doing. That's a live call-in show, and then he's got the pregame show with T. Frank Carr. Like I think I think that's something that fans like. That's just never going to go away. It's going to evolve, but I think it's never going to go away. So yeah,
I agree.
Well, thanks for Mike for joining us. Okay. There's that. You have 5 questions for me, or a couple questions for me. You have a number of questions for me.
I think I'm just going to keep it at 5.
You
I
just
was
sent
going to
me
have
this
Penn State basketball one.
Anonymous text over the weekend. I was like, I have 5 questions for you. That was it.
Well, this is the one I'm not going to ask.
Okay.
It was a question about Penn State basketball, and if you're tired of hearing, that's great, they played so hard. Hey, they're doing better. Like it feels like that's an annual thing. So maybe I was feeling snarky, so I'm not going to ask that question.
I'll answer that question, even if
okay.
There's no
So here's
question
your bonus question. There you go.
I've been really, and I didn't write this last week, and I had kind of waiting for the money thing to come out, the NCAA thing to come out. I've started to become like conspiratorial towards the fact that Penn State basketball might be a shell corporation for Penn State athletics to like just get money, like. And it's sad because it's like I do want Penn State basketball to be good. I want them to be like I want them to win. I want them to succeed. And it doesn't make sense that it's the biggest school in the state, and this is a state with a hotbed of basketball, right? Like especially at the collegiate level or at the high school level, and yet none of it can kind of be converted on, and I don't understand it. So it's my
That's fair.
Yes, I am tired of it, but it's like it's like a systemic thing. It's not like. It's not like I'm looking at Mike Rhodes or Carolyn Keeger or even like Pat Kraft. It's just like this like general weird apathy that no.
Okay.
No.
You talked about talent in the state for basketball. This is a talent for football national question.
Okay.
A theme I've been hearing among the media in the past week is that programs like Indiana and other teams have succeeded more because NIL has balanced out the talent across the country. It's dispersed the talent. Georgia isn't as deep as it used to be. Alabama isn't as deep as it used to be. If that's true, does that mean the coaches that were winning championships with those teams were getting too much credit because they just had better talent to begin with?
That's a more of a rhetorical question than I think you've answered your own take.
Well,
on
I'm just,
that.
I mean,
but yes,
they made that argument for years
correct.
that Saban is so good
saying.
and whatever else. But if he had all the talent, shouldn't he have been good? Like it's an interesting. I don't know.
I think about this in a couple different ways. I think about it with Saban, and I think about it maybe even with James Franklin, right? Like, the alignment can only get you so far, but then again, calling the right plays can only get you so far. And I do think, to Saban's credit, he always had a team very well prepared. He's always had a team ready for the moment, and very rarely did they not meet the moment. I mean, in the times that they did, the time they lost to Clemson out in San Francisco, the main one, it's like so astonishingly like stunning. I think I have been thinking about the whole, like, because this is the third year that the Big Ten has sent a Big Ten school Big Ten has sent a school to the national championship game, and like it does feel like the Big Ten is not about the Big Ten in the way the SEC is about the SEC, and like this whole like, well, we're all like, even if we're sending our one delegate from the SEC, like I'm mildly annoyed that Indiana is going. I'm also excited for Indiana that's going because I just like Bloomington. I think it's a good town. I think that what it has done is at least made the playing field more level in it, with the portal being open, that you can go solve problems quicker. Because this would not be if Kurt Signetti was hired at Indiana, this would not be happening. This last year would not have even happened in Indiana.
Oh yeah, if he was Tom Moore 5 years ago, he'd be Tom Moore.
Right.
Well, he'd be better than Tom Moore.
Like
still.
even, and I even think with Matt Campbell, like that's kind of why, like, when everybody was freaking out about the recruits and like, oh, Penn State's only signing 2 recruits initially there, like, you knew what was coming. Like you knew that this massive portal influx was coming, and that's okay. It's part of the situation now. And I think you brought this up last week. It's like, do you if you can turn that part off in your brain, and you're like, I just like watching the football games and the outcome of the football game, and don't care about anything else, that's great. But if you're somebody like me that like wants to know who's coming and going and all of that stuff, I think it's also great. Like I just think it's, in some ways, I really believe that the portal has made the sport more enjoyable and more fun because there's all this other stuff going on now. There's all this side drama going on now that's made it more interesting. So back to your original question of, I think the portal and the transfer situation and and NIL has made things a little bit more balanced. But at the same time, you have to know how to get your quarterback into a rhythm and make sure that he doesn't underthrow a wide receiver so that he's trying to draw defensive pass interference and things like that, James Franklin. And that's where you have to have a brain to at least coach and manage the game. Like it's a team sport for a reason.
Okay. Well, then that actually jumps to another question. Okay. Jumps me how to one to another one. Is there a number? Is there a portal number of additions which to you feels too much? Which to you feels like, okay, I don't have a Penn State team. This is just a group of, like this year, the number seems like it has to be bigger because they had many departures, new coach coming in. There's going to be more than 30, maybe 40 that join the program. If it's that number every year, is that too many, or is there a number that doesn't matter? So what? As long as they got blue and white on Saturday next year, I don't care.
It would be tiring from our pseudo media lens that we approach it from, and not like the media, like we cover the media, the like me updating the transfer portal tracker every season to do this. Like that would be tiring if it was 40 guys and 50 guys leaving and 40 guys coming. Like that would be really tiring. I think going back to some of this is like, I know like it's tough because like we tend to shame the instant gratification world, but I want Penn State to be good every single year. And with them making portal additions because they hired a new coach, this gives them at least an opportunity to be good. And that makes me even all the more excited for the Matt Campbell era. So like right now, no, there is not a number that like makes me feel uncomfortable. I think it's a concern if 3 years from now we're seeing Penn State lose 40 guys to the transfer portal process and then bringing in 40 guys, because what culture are you building, and like are you a good leader, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it feels like this is going to be the big year, and maybe next coming years it's 8
or
something like that. But of course that's what would happen before, but still.
Well, because like Notre Dame, they just signed their second guy out of the portal today, and they had the number 2 recruiting class. Like I think that everybody's like, oh, like there's all these big swings and what's the point of a recruiting class? Well, like that's all of this stuff still matters. It's just you have to manage it very differently, and it's not the same for Penn State or even Iowa State as it is for Notre Dame and USC that have an established situation.
Okay, cool. This question, as I look at it now, may be more rhetorical. Okay. It's a little lighthearted. I'm curious if you feel satisfied that the millionaire football coaches that coach college football are adequately protected when they're going to games with all the policemen and troopers around them. Like, because I saw the intros and I'm just curious if you think they're safe or if we need to add more protection.
You must have been reading my mind, because did I text you about this?
No.
Oh, because I
saw Signetti, I think, getting ready to come out. But who's gonna get them?
Signetti's got one, and
he's got
Mario's got a whole.
Some of them have 3 or 4. They have the state trooper. They have the campus guy, the person. But who's gonna get them? And what are they protecting them from?
I don't understand it. This is something I want to look into this offseason, because I just don't. I want to know where that started, why that started. There has to be a good story of why it started, right?
Like, is it a power? With Bear Bryant. I think it started in the South.
Is it a power thing? Is it like we just look badass because we got a cop out here with us? Like what is it is almost like we've become so accepting of it that it's just like an afterthought, like, right? Like, but then like in the NFL, you have no cops usually with them, but then everybody makes fun of Big Dom in Philly, right?
Yeah, but I think but nobody else has a big,
right, but nobody has
a Big Dom that acts that way.
Yeah.
But think about if 3 or 4 cops that were following
Tom.
someone from Penn State would go out and direct some traffic for you post game. Things might go a little quicker.
It'd be great. I want to know, like, I want to know everything. I'm glad that you have. It's just like they're standing there, like, what are they gonna do? Like, and they don't break up fights. Like, when there are fights, do they break them up? I don't think I've ever seen.
There was a story that someone did about the Pennsylvania State Police being around Coach Franklin, because there's state police and there's a campus police person, and the state police was like, they're being there to be paid to be seen as the state police because they get glimpsed on TV. I'll have to dig and see if I can find the story, but that's the most effective outreach they have. I don't know.
There's got to be more PR.
Next one is a multiple. Well, it's only 2 choices.
Okay.
It's an either or question.
Okay.
Which Penn State football father are you most excited about this coming season? LeVar Arrington or Anthony Becht?
Your generation seems to be very fired up about Anthony Becht. Like, I've seen people be like, I'm going to go find my Anthony Becht card.
I just think they're both active on social media and have connection, feel like they're going to be there. So I'm just curious.
I like the guy, I think it's Swell, Sowel. He had 2 sons commit from their wide receiver and I think a safety. I can't remember. I think it's maybe Chase. Starts with a C, I think. He's been kind of funny on Twitter. That being said, we will pick LeVar. We will pick LeVar, assuming that his son is staying, which I think he is at this point. Just because I think LeVar is like, LeVar's kind of on the Roar Plus thing. He asked the right questions. He gets a little rambly, and not that we don't get a little rambly on this podcast. He gets a little rambly, but he does get some good questions out and good answers out of the people that he interviews. No, and I think LeVar just always. I've enjoyed watching LeVar be an ambassador, even if he is sometimes shilling some lots of products, including beer and NIL and various other things.
Well, as long as you know he's always pitching, right? Like that's the thing. He's always pitching. So, well, this is the last question, and when he's, I think easily. Could you assess your hopes and expectations for swag associated with the Penn State hockey outdoor game?
Ooh, this is a good question. I have noticed somebody else put up shirts. Lion and Cub? Whatever the one is by the old Brothers Pizza directly downtown. Whatever, like across the street from Old Main, pretty much. Yep. Not Lion's Pride, the other one. They send a lot of emails. They put out some stuff. I want to be able to buy things. I want to be able to easily buy things when I walk into Beaver Stadium in 2-ish weeks. I want them to be celebratory of the moment. I want them to be. I don't want them to just be T-shirts or clothing items. I want things like. So if you're watching, you can see over to where my hand is, which is my left hand. But I think if you're watching, it might be on your right. There are 2 pucks full of water from the times that the Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Like they melted the ice down to water, and now they're in those pucks over there. I want those. I want that type of stuff. I want, like, this is a big moment. I hope that it's thought through. I hope this has been thought through. That I, as you can see, various knickknacks behind me. I want more of those knickknacks to put up back here. Yes.
That's very good. I thought about clothing swag, and I thought about friend of the show, Darren Ravel of Collect, right? And the kind of things you would do from an event like this leading up to and after. So yeah, I agree. So that's why I just wanted to ask. It's you would hope every aspect for what we talk about Penn State trying to sell everything anymore. This is one where you can sell it all. Melt that ice and sell some stuff. Have some stuff when people come in. Have pucks when they come in that say the game and the date and the time, so people can buy those. Because yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff. What else was I thinking about? I'm interested to see what they do about jerseys, and I do feel like the hockey jersey, like there's been a. I would bet. I am willing to bet. I'm not willing to bet. I am very confident that the number 2 sport selling jersey now is hockey at Penn State, and maybe has been ever since they became a Division I program. I am interested to see how available, which we would assume that Penn State is rolling out some new jerseys, how quickly those become available. I'm also interested to see if we get the men's and women's jerseys are the same or different.
Yeah, I would think they'd be different, but I guess I would think they would. That'd be my expectation. And I guess now that you said that, I don't know that we've seen, typically for the White Rush game or whatever they call it each year, they roll out the white jersey. And I don't know that we've seen that this year.
Mm-mm.
I don't think so, but now we're 2 weeks out from the game you might want to do it for. So yeah.
I mean, I would assume that even Michigan State's probably going to have some custom jerseys.
I would think so. Yeah.
I am interested if there's any I mean, in some ways this is a showcase for Penn State hockey, but Michigan State's still going to be involved. But I'm wondering if there's any reciprocating agreement on maybe not necessarily an outdoor game at Michigan State, but what's Michigan State getting out of this besides the national exposure, right? Did they ask for anything else? Guess we'll never know.
I know. Maybe we may never know because we'll see.
Yeah.
But those are your 5 questions. See,
okay.
Stuff Summer says you got to say some things about those are my questions.
All right.
They weren't that out of the blue.
No. You never know. When one of us says that we have questions, usually it can get a little stressful. Usually that's me asking.
Put you in a position to succeed. Yeah, see? There you go.
Anything else you want to go over tonight? We have an old guy, young guy. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we didn't do an old guy, young guy. That's okay. It was Stuff Summer says. We got to hear you talk.
Yeah. Well,
we kind of old guy, young guy the farm show.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Did you buy did you buy anything outside of food at the farm show? I don't know that I ever have.
No, we sometimes buy some small food vendor jerky or something else.
Yeah.
I was close on some. It wasn't Carhartt though. It was some knockoff Carhartt brand with lined pants that were 2 for some ridiculously low price. I'm like, but I didn't know how they were going to fit, and it's not like there was a changing place right there in the middle of everything. So did not pull the trigger on that. So no, it was about putting the grandson in the tractor and then telling him that he was done because someone else had to go, and he'd say, "Not done driving yet," and so it was. And the granddaughter, who's kind of sneaky, when they were digging in the dirt together, and the grandson got some dirt on himself, she kind of tossed a little more on him, as if nobody would notice, but she kind of noticed. I'm like, that's smooth, gotta like that. So it was those moments. That's what we were there for.
How was the butter sculpture? What was the motif?
Cool. Declaration of Independence, Pennsylvania 250. So, or USA 250, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. So that stuff didn't feel too heavy-handed yet. So that was nice.
And I am interested to see how that happens in college sports. We've already seen it with the NFL. Between the footballs having it and then I am sure if some team or program or conference doesn't do it well enough to the liking of someone, they will hear about it. So, okay. Well, that's this week's podcast. Thanks to Mike for joining us. I don't know what's coming this week. I thought about a survey. I thought about writing that basketball thought. There will be something appearing on the blog at some point this week. And then I
gotta do something. I hesitate for doing the shoots and ladders with the women because it feels like I'm piling on, and I don't know that anybody cares. So
not going great there either. Penn State basketball does not have a win in 2026.
But men have an associate head coach who's named one of the top 100 associate head coaches in college basketball.
Great.
How many programs are there? 300. So he's in the top third.
Well, each has at least 3, so the top 9th.
That's true. That's true. There are no coaches and there are players anymore, so they got it. Somebody's got to be coaching well somewhere.
It's just sad. Just sad. Did you watch the hockey games this weekend?
Penn State?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there. I listened. I watched one and was at another.
Okay.
So yes.
Okay. I thought they looked better this week. I think you can see I think the Charlie Serrato thing is going to be something to keep an eye on. But I think they're starting to get their groove.
Yes, I think the challenge
is maintaining.
They challenge the defenseman to be more offensive. I think how they do that without giving up some quirky stuff on the back end may be a challenge, at least initially, because I think the folks in the back end that want to score will be happy to do that, happy to come up and try to do more, but then they've got to watch. I mean, there were a couple options for Minnesota to get a couple goals that they didn't at times in the second night. But yeah, I think.
I mean, Friday was the most comfortable I've seen them look. I didn't watch Saturday's game, but Friday was the most comfortable I've seen them all season.
Yes, yeah. Okay. But Chuck was good too. I mean, not having Chuck, Shea Van Olm's out a little bit. Ford's out now after, not that he played a lot, but he had some depth and some minutes there. Some guys that are getting banged up, but they're going at this from 8th in the nation at this point of the season as opposed to 40th at this point last year. So they should be in good enough shape to get to where they want to and then go from there.
Okay. All right. Anyways, name of this podcast. We already told you that. Website. Renewed the hosting fee on the website.
Saw that.
So we're good there for another 2 years. You're stuck with that. StuffSummerSays.com. On that website, there's a section called With
Steve.
Thank you to everybody that buys stuff, because that stuff pays for the us keeping the lights on. So if you want to buy more stuff, there you go.
We'll put in smaller bulbs.
Yes.
More efficient bulbs.
There we go. So there's that. 5 stars, thumbs up, like and subscribe. I have an email. Mine's Darian at StuffSummerSays.com. Steve's is
Steve at StuffSummerSays.com.
Perfect. And lastly, you can find me on the internet at Stuff Summer Says. You can find Steve
at Steve Samsel.
See ya. Bye.